Yesterday, we saw dramatic footage of the FBI taking down a 21-year-old Massachusetts Air National Guardsman being charged with leaking classified documents to an online gamer group. What do you make of this story?
Yeah, there's three elements to this, and my first take on this is I don't think we're casting a wide enough net. When you talk about a young airman, an E3 or private first class and an Army equivalent, for him to have access to classified documents means that some other people far more senior to him have also made some mistakes. So I'm interested in the chain of custody. The second question I have is, how much time was he allotted with these documents to take photographs of what appears to be hundreds of these documents? He had some alone time. So that's the offense that I'm interested in. He had it. He took pictures of it. That's bad enough. But then he posted it online, apparently to win some arguments with his friends, an online discussion group called Discuss. And then what happened after that? Obviously, it got out. It wasn't just a couple of dozen people that he's talking to. Someone took it and started posting it in other places, and the internet's forever, and the internet can populate very quickly at the speed of light. And the Russians got a hold of it and obviously tried to modify a couple of the documents. One of them, I think, was the most obvious, was the fudging of the actual casualty number. There's no way they've only lost 17,000. But that I think diverges from the central issue is the mishandling of classified documents and the fact that our allies don't trust us because our methods of controlling sensitive information is just not secure.
Some people have taken exception with the fact that this is a 21-year-old kid. I mean, I served in the military. Military is made up of a lot of very young people. Do you find that troubling that a 21-year-old would have access to such classified and sensitive documents?
It kind of depends on the unit he's a part of. As I understand it, he belongs to an arm or a branch of the Air National Guard that's an intelligence collection unit that deals in information. And so you do have in each of the branches of the service intelligence battalions or intelligence companies that are responsible for pushing information. He was a part of a cyber wing that's responsible for security of digital information. So he would have access to that stuff because he's touching computers. So I would be more concerned if it were, an E3, an armory unit, or an infantry unit. But he would have access to it based on where he was stationed.
Well, the other issue is there's a debate as to what these documents have actually revealed. Some are saying, for instance, at the White House secretary, the communication secretary there said, basically, listen, these are troops. We have troops in Ukraine, but they're there just to track how well Ukraine is using our equipment. Some are saying that, in fact, we have Americans on the ground, as well as British and other people from our allies on the ground actually fighting the Russians. I'm not sure where the truth is in this, but what do you say, retired Army Colonel Mat Dooley?
If you look at the numbers of the troops that are there, we're talking maybe a dozen, maybe a little over. That lines up with the number of troops you might have on the ground if you have an embassy or a consulate presence. That's not enough to be decisive. I mean, if I had 12 to 14 soldiers who were able to go to the front lines and turn the direction of the war at the strategic level, I would want to know who these men or women were. It doesn't line up with the idea that we've got troops actively engaged in fighting. It does line up with having soldiers on the ground doing training for special forces or something called FIT, which is foreign internal development. Guys who might be training, guys who might be doing what's called white ops, just advisory roles. Maybe in a command post somewhere, but more likely, I think they're there because we have a diplomatic presence, and you have to have some sort of military capability to get someone out, safeguard and protect them until you can get assets in to get them out. And that's what you look at. It's not like we've got hundreds or thousands of trigger pullers on the ground. You just have a very small footprint, and that comes with a little bit of a military presence.
But I worry about the optics into this. And I was thinking when I was looking at this story about a man that I met when I was a kid in ROTC. His name was Sergeant Roy Benavides, Master Sergeant Roy Benavides at the time. And this would have been like 1990, something like that, 1991. He had earned the Medal of Honor in 1968 as an Army Special Forces guy on the border between Cambodia and Vietnam. He helped to save some men who were going behind enemy lines in Cambodia, trying to abduct a Russian-made utility truck that was making its way north through Cambodia because there was a supply line there. And they wanted to prove to the world definitively that, in fact, the Russians were the Soviets were actively supporting the North Vietnamese army. And I think about that story and what he had to endure for 6 hours in a bloody battle, almost dying himself in the process to try to save his comrades there, his friends, his brothers in arms. And yet we were trying to prove to the world that the Russians were actively involved in supporting material, troops, and other issues in support of the NVA. And he had to go through so much. So I'm thinking about that, and I think, well, what do the Russians think now? I mean, it's sort of the opposite of this. We are, in fact, supplying billions of dollars of money, aid, and material. And now we have advisors on the ground there. Is this a road to escalation? If you're Vladimir Putin, how do you see this? You must be threatened by this reality, no?
Yeah, candidly, I think that the Russians are looking for any scrap of information they could use. They practice information warfare like anyone else, and their propaganda. There's two different directions. There's their outward-facing international attempt to control the narrative, but there's also propaganda designed for internal influence, and you can just watch some of the Russian talking heads on their shows, and some of the things that they say. Any little scrap of information, whether it's true or truth adjacent, is going to be manipulated to justify their feelings, to justify this war, and to justify their narrative that this is a defensive action against the encroaching West. So I would not be surprised to see this sort of information, and that's why it's so damaging. I'm concerned with the mismanagement of classified information. I don't care who does it, whether it's an E3 or a former vice president, senator, or someone who puts a homebrew server in a bathroom. Anybody that treats the management of classified information with disregard and a cavalier attitude risks doing this kind of thing to our diplomatic and military efforts, regardless of whether or not you're talking about Ukraine or other issues. There's a reason why it's classified.
I saw another article somewhat related. Seymour Hersh has been putting out reports. He's has a report out that says $400 million have been embezzled by the Ukrainian government from American and foreign aid coming to their country. Do you think that these troops that are revealed in these documents are there to try to get a grip on that, our equipment, the reports that have been going in, that they've been going to the black market and whatnot? Do you think we're sending them there to figure out why there's waste going on?
Yeah, I think oversight is important, and we did say we were going to manage some oversight, and so there is a deliberate, active effort to ensure that what we send there, whether it's weapons or foreign aid cash, is going to the right sources, going to the right direction for the right purposes. It's much harder to mismanage where the weapons go because they are in an existential fight. I would submit that probably most everything that we send there, that's weapons and ammunition, tanks or whatever, is going directly into the fight. It's much harder to track where the funds go, and that's a different challenge. But it makes sense to have folks on the ground, whether it's State Department or military, who are tracking to make sure that what we send goes to the right place. You know, that region of the world culturally, regardless of whether you're talking about the Ukrainians or someone else, has a problem with corruption. And that's the nature of that portion of Eastern Europe. So being suspect, trust but verify, I think is justified.
Let's switch to Taiwan. We have about a minute and a half left with retired Army Colonel Mat Dooley. Taiwan, big war games from China this past week. Heavy pressure pushing ever so closer to Taiwan. And Taiwan is very nervous, it would seem, by looking at the reports. Also, there was a report that Xi Jinping has called his military to prepare for combat. How do you see this? Is this just more posturing? Are we just reading headline news here? Or have things escalated?
I think both. I know it's kind of a milquetoasty answer, but let me be more specific. I think you've got to, when you look at the Chinese and what they say, you have to take them at their word. But a lot of it is posturing. There are things they're going to do internally and things they're going to say outwardly that are a bit different. But what we know for sure is that they view Taiwan as part of one China, mainland China, and they have an intent to eventually draw them into their sphere. That runs into and against our philosophy, which is they should be separate. Now, we do have a one China policy that President Carter agreed to, but we recognize the sovereignty and independence of Taiwanese to make their own determination about how that comes about, and that's the friction. The rest of the Pacific Rim is interested in this because, as goes Taiwan, so go all of the other territories in the area, all of the other zones of fishing rights and resource rights, which are quite competitive if you're Vietnam or Japan or Indonesia or anyone else in that area. So everyone's interested in making sure that China follows international law and obeys by the rules, and they are becoming more bellicose and more aggressive. But it's important, especially in an era of escalation, that we be very direct and very clear about where our red lines are. And we haven't been in the recent past, and that's my concern, that we end up in a war because of miscalculation and misunderstanding.
So with just a few seconds left on the clock here, on a scale of 1 to 10, what are the chances, do you think we're going to be in an actual conflict with a military conflict with China in the next 2-3 years?
Before Ukraine, I would have said it was a high likelihood. I would say that what's happened with Ukraine and Russia's inability to carry it out, I think, has given the Chinese a moment of pause. So I would reduce that number to about 50-50.
All right, 50-50. Yikes. I don't even know if I like that number, but retired Army Colonel Mat Dooley, I appreciate you jumping on the line with us today and giving us some insights into these stories. God bless you. God love you. And we'll hopefully have you back soon.
Thanks.
All right, coming up after the break, we're going to have some news for you. And then Archduke Edward